So let's get started. In the blurb you received when you signed up for this, I boldly stated that Mathematics Mastery is both a curriculum and a PD programme that supports teachers in developing their subject knowledge and pedagogical expertise through each and every engagement with the programme. And I think it's a pretty bold claim, but I hope I'm going to exemplify that statement over the next hour. And we believe that PD is the golden thread that runs through everything that we do. So in the chat box, can you list as many opportunities as you can think of that your team has for maths-specific professional development? Departmental meetings sometimes. Thank you, Barbara. Monthly meetings with maths departments, excellent. Learning walks, yeah, they're really good professional development. Shared expertise in set days. Weekly team meetings, yeah. Curriculum meetings, thank you, Kieran. Did I miss out any earlier on, Phil?
I think you covered most of them.
Yeah, lots of informal meetings. Can't be underestimated how powerful they are in a maths department. I say that with my old head of maths hat on and my SLT hat as well. So now I'm just going to give you a moment to think about how many of those are collaborative for your team. You don't need to write anything in the chat box about that, just reflect on that. And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to share some key findings from the Education Policy Institute's piece of work by Harry Fletcher Wood, whose name you might know, and James Zuccalo. So it was an evidence review on the effects of high quality professional development on teachers and students. In fact, there were a number of pieces of evidence that came out of this report. I've only picked out a few, but there's a link there on the slide for you to read it if you'd like to see the rest of them. But I'll let you read that. And they stated that the impact of CPD on pupil outcomes had compared to the impact of having a teacher with 10 years experience rather than a new graduate. And that CPDs also had similar attainment effects to those generated by large structural reforms to the school system. So really huge outcome on high quality CPD for teachers on pupils' learning. Okay, we know that other factors other than CPD do tend to be behind teachers' decisions to quit the profession, sadly, but there is evidence that supports targeted CPD programs for teachers in the early stages of their careers, keeping them in the profession. I wanted to choose one that referenced workload. Workload's so important. High teacher workload represents one of the greatest obstacles to accessing CPD. We know that interventions are more likely to see success if they're attractive and strive to minimise demands placed on teachers. And this one about the role of school leaders and that those designing CPD programmes can also ensure continuity by considering changes in school leadership, and part of our training is for school leaders to ensure that there is that continuity for teams as they access the programme. So we know that CPD is really important. You managed to achieve certain levels of CPD, which you've shared in the chat. We know it's really critical to teachers' development and professional satisfaction. So why aren't we doing more of it? And we think there are two main reasons. So first of all, it's really hard to know what to do. How do teachers reflect and identify some of the highest leverage developmental tasks to undertake? We also know that teachers work in silos and that can be demotivating and isolating. And it's really difficult to think innovatively when you're not working collaboratively. It's a disincentivization to give PD the profile it deserves. So we want to show you how we deal with some of those challenges in maths mastery. So there are really three main elements in our PD. There's the training that we offer and the in-school support. There are all the resources that accompany our lessons. At the very centre of that circle, there are our departmental workshops, which I'm going to be talking about first of all. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about the fundamental philosophy that underpins our programme. You probably all heard the Dylan William quote that every teacher needs to improve, not because they're not good enough, but because they can be even better. And I really do love thinking about PD from that starting point. And we believe that our underpinning principles of our curriculum design are key to making good teachers even better. So the principles of the dimension of depth came from Helen Drury's research, Helen Drury, our founder, into what was preventing pupils from leaving school with sufficient mathematical knowledge and skills for future learning. And the evidence from the research literature and classroom experience points to three main barriers which prevent students from achieving maths. What's really interesting is that it's the same three barriers that prevent lower priority students to achieving as preventing higher priority students from excelling. And they are, first of all, that students do not have sufficient conceptual understanding. They think about maths in silos, in separate topics that aren't connected. They don't have any meaningful conceptual understanding of the maths that they learn. They see it as a set of rules just to learn. And we feel that conceptual understanding can be developed through representations, using objects, pictures, words, and symbols, and that those representations will support students in making connections. She also identified that students don't have the sufficient language and communication skills that they need to be able to think about the subject, that they can't explain or justify. They don't have the accurate mathematical vocabulary and language to discuss the subject. And lastly, the third dimension of depth is that students do not have sufficient skills to think mathematically. They're not prepared or don't know how to make conjectures or to try out specific examples of organising or comparing or looking for patterns and generalising. All the things that we would love our students to be able to do because we know it will make them really good mathematicians. And these are our dimensions of depth. I'll be referring to them over the rest of the time we're together. And they're premised on a belief that all pupils have the ability to learn mathematics. We know from research that there is no such thing as a mathematically deficient mind. And so our curriculum is the same for all pupils. The pupils challenged to deepen understanding in the three dimensions. In my work before Maths Master as a head of maths, and as assistant head teacher, I would say teaching for this disciplinary knowledge is probably the hardest thing to design a lesson around. And our lessons are designed to incorporate these three principles into every lesson alongside the substantive knowledge that we have to teach. And it can be difficult to learn how to do this well, which is why PD is integral to everything that we do. So let's return to those departmental workshops, or DWs, that I mentioned that sit at the centre of our PD. So it's at the centre because we believe it takes a team to teach a child maths. And if you can achieve consistency across your departments, then your students will get exponentially stronger as they move from year to year because they'll have the same expectations of what learning mathematics is. So for the teachers that are here watching this webinar, how many times have you inherited a class that won't speak, or maybe has never seen a representation that you regularly use? And it's really, really frustrating. So let's think about a very specific example. The DW and the unit that we're going to use to exemplify our approach focuses on positive and negative numbers. And in fact, it's one that we ran recently with a group of 40 Fox School teachers. So imagine Imagine you're either brand new to teaching directed numbers, or you're an experienced teacher who's used some of these methods. This was a method I used for absolutely years when I started teaching, or perhaps something like this. Our unit focuses on the use of double-sided counters to develop a deep conceptual understanding of performing the 4 operations on positive and negative numbers. So we use manipulatives. And the EEF recommends the use of manipulatives in their Improving Mathematics in Key Stages 2 and 3 guidance reports. And I will pop the link to this in the chat if you haven't seen this before, I'm sure you have. And so in recommendation 2 on using the manipulatives, they state that manipulatives and representations can help pupils engage with mathematical ideas. Their tools, how they are used is essential. They need to be used purposefully and appropriately to have an impact. And there must be a clear rationale to teach a specific mathematical concept. So focusing on 2 and 3, I can't stress enough that this takes significant time to develop in your teaching if you are doing this from scratch. And it will only become really impactful when students get repeated opportunities to engage with these manipulatives and the thinking behind them over time. So in our unit that we're going to look at, we've chosen double-sided counters as a manipulative to support students' understanding of directed number, and it's linked to the representation of a number line because that's the direction of directed numbers. And there's a really good chance you'll be really familiar with number lines as a representation and less familiar with double-sided counters. So let's take a look at how we prep teachers to engage with this manipulative. So this is where a bit of audience participation comes in. I'm going to put a question up, but don't type the answer in the chat straight away if you can see it, because not everyone will be a subject specialist. Imagine you've got a set of blue and red counters. Up in the top right corner, you see that the blue counter with plus is a positive 1. Red counter with the minus sign on it is a negative 1. And the question is, what colour are the 2 A counters and what colour is B? So I'm going to give you a couple of hints. I'm going to stop talking for a moment just to give you a chance to think about this. I'm going to give you some hints progressively. You may already know the answer straight away. So if you do, you may find the hints annoying. If you don't, you might find the hints helpful. That's the first hint. Rearrange the counters for you to see these pluses and minuses side by side. And one more rearrangement. As we cross out those 0 pairs. Okay, so please feel free to type in the chat what's the A counter, what the value of the A counter is, and what the value of the B counter is. Thank you. Excellent, thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Kieran. Okay, so just while people type that in, you've seen the answers, reflect on that process. How did you find the process of completing the maths yourself? What were you thinking about as you went through it? What sort of cognitive load did you have? And do you imagine everyone on the call was thinking the same thing as they went through it? What insights could we get if we were all discussing that first question as a group? It's got to be greater than the sum of its parts, that conversation. Looking for pairs, fantastic, exactly what we're doing. And discussing that with colleagues is just a different experience altogether than sitting there thinking about it on your own. So this is our departmental workshop. It's a worksheet on a slide in the unit where we pick a key task from the week, and we give some prompt questions to support the team in thinking about it. We also include a link to a short video that's made by the designer of the unit, which gives insights into the thinking behind the unit to help support that planning. So I'm going to just play you a minute from this, just to give you a sense of what these little videos are like. I hope this is going to work.
There are two key representations that are relied upon throughout the 3-week unit looking at positive and negative numbers. The first is a number line representation, which demonstrates to students that numbers have both a direction, positive or negative, and a magnitude, a size or a distance from 0. The second representation uses counters. Different coloured counters or two-sided counters can be used. You can make your own two-sided counters by sticking 2 different coloured sheets of card together and cutting them into squares with a guillotine. Lesson 2 continues to focus on the idea of magnitude and direction by comparing numbers using a number line and looking at their difference or their distance to 0. In Lesson 3,
okay, I'm just going to stop it there. We keep the videos short because we know teachers don't have time on their hands, but we want to include as much as we possibly can to support their thinking behind the unit. I'm just going to veer off on a tangent to another element of our PD. So we have online training, and mastery leads get access to a termly training session, which focuses both on pedagogy and leadership. So this is PD for your PD lead in your maths department. And you can see that in the first term, we were focusing on how to plan a departmental workshop and participating in one, because that's the best way to learn, to see something modelled. Next term, we're looking at leading your unique team, and then in summer term, looking to lead 2-year groups. And another live DW, because they're our favourite part of maths training. And this is a 3-year programme, so you're just looking at the first year of this training programme. And I'm just going to play a short extract from that, planning ahead and live DW, again, just to give you a sense of what that's like. This is the recorded version, so that anyone that can't make it can go back and watch it on our platform, but it's also offered live, and it's a chance where MLs get to meet each other and talk to each other about the challenges that they face. So I'm just going to play a short extract from this training session. It's a different unit that we're focused on here.
Sure, but they've been so well received. You've got the representations along the top, you've got the start of unit quiz, so you can see the kind of information we want to gather from the students. You've also got these response signposts as well, so referring to where they've seen concepts before, and of course the intervention materials. What we'd like you to do is to hop back into Jamboard. I will just pop the link back in the chat if you have closed it down. We're not going to go into breakout rooms, but you should be able to go into...
Okay, I'm just going to stop Gemma there. So you can see there's an awful lot of collaboration. There's Jamboards, there's breakout rooms, and it's a really good chance to get to think through how other MLs work on leading their teams as well. Right. So in our training, we model the process for DWs, and they participate and consider how they're going to lead their DWs. This again is one of our training slides. In a departmental workshop where a maths team is working together, they all sit and do the maths together. They sit and answer the questions on the slide individually to think through it in depth, and then discuss what might students find easy. What might they find difficult about this task? How are you going to challenge your students, or how are you going to support them? I would absolutely love more than anything to do this with you now, but that's not the purpose of this webinar. So Phil will tell me off if I start going into doing a load of maths with everyone. So the most important thing is that in the DW, the team does the maths. They do that together, and they get to sit and discuss how they're teaching as a team. So now that you've seen one of our slides there as well, if fully, I'm just wondering if anybody has any questions at this point. I'm just going to pause for a moment to see if anyone's going to pop anything in the chat. If you've got anything you might like to ask at this point. Okay, so we've got some links and resources that teachers can use for everyday planning. I'm actually going to get onto that shortly. So hopefully I'll answer that question in a little bit. Any other questions coming up? I wondered if anybody, sorry.
No, none at the moment.
I wondered if anybody might ask, well, actually, that there's a lot on this slide, and would you present it to your students like this, because it looks a bit busy? And our curriculum is resourced, it's not planned. I talked before about thinking about how you would use manipulatives from scratch if your department weren't already teaching with them. You can imagine making a slide like this with all these representations on. It's hugely time consuming. So we've done the heavy work for your team by creating the slides, but it is resourced, it's not planned. Our slides communicate the task, and it's for teachers to adapt them for the students in their class. Okay, as a team in the DW, you then also jointly consider how you will develop that disciplinary learning into your teaching. So if we go back to our mastery lead training slides, you can see that the dimensions of depth that I talked through at the start are highlighted, and we have chosen this particular dimension of depth as a focus for this departmental workshop, and that is that learners must create connections between concepts. Representations can help them to make connections. We thought that one was really, really an appropriate focus for a team to discuss, because in this unit, students are using double-sided counters to think about adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers, but they're also connecting that to direction on a number line. So that's two very different representations of number, and actually they can make very deep connections by using those representations side by side. In the departmental workshop, we ran this one on directed numbers with the art teachers just for half term. In a really short length of time, we were asking teachers to not only completely reconsider their thinking on how they teach addition and subtraction of negative numbers, but also to plan how to introduce manipulatives as representations into their classrooms and other areas of the curriculum. Imagine how difficult developing insights such as that and realizations and revelations would be to achieve as an individual teacher. Do you think they'd feel really confident just reading that off a set of slides and planning it on their own? And what level of consistency would you then see across a department? How could their students benefit from harnessing the collective knowledge and wisdom of the department? And if you're sitting there at home alone trying to do that, do you think we might end up hearing something like this? Actually, I feel pretty confident with using my table, one that I used for years. I've always taught it like this, and I think it works quite well. Perhaps. Okay, let's think about this number. How would you say this number aloud? Could you please type that into the chat? How you personally say that number out loud? Oh, we've got real consistency here so far. Everybody's saying -3. Nobody said -3. I do know that I would often hear that in departments when I go on school visits, a difference between -3 and -3, but we've got some really consistent participants here today. We do know, oh, we've got one person saying -3. And you know what, that's probably my default as well, but I do now say -3. We know that some people may say -3 and some may say -3. And at the start of each lesson, we have this slide. It's notes and guidance. And it's PD to support thinking about specific planning of the lesson. It's where you go to when you're thinking about planning through that lesson. Phil's going to talk about the actual resources themselves in a little bit, but this comes before the resources. It takes you through that planning and thinking through the dimensions of depth as well. So let's just focus up here on this top right hand corner, which is on the new learning slide. I'm going to zoom in on that. We look at this particular section, you can see that the notes and guidance in this slide are PD for both substantive knowledge, so that's what students know about the subject. So in this case, they're going to learn that subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive. That's the substantive knowledge of content of this lesson. But it's also PD for disciplinary knowledge, so how we know about our subject. We know about our subject, our beautiful subject, through the language that we use. So suggesting that we talk about -3 subtract -2, or -3 subtract minus -2. And also we know about our subject through the representations that we use. So that's how we develop conceptual understanding. So through those notes and guidance and the departmental workshop together, the collaborative nature of the departmental workshop and the detail in those slides, it becomes PD for a common approach such all of the department is going to use negative for direction and minus as an operator. And in fact, there's a lesson on that previously to the lesson that I've just shared with you. Or it might be a common approach that we're all going to use double-sided counters alongside number lines. We use both of them to exemplify the conceptual understanding of adding and subtracting directed numbers. That's really, really specific. And in my experience, lots of different language gets used in this topic from teacher to teacher. So having that real specificity in the notes will support consistency and support students moving from teacher to teacher in their understanding. And a couple of weeks ago, I was at a talk by Steve Wren, and he highlighted the importance of a common approach. So think back to the start of the webinar and how many opportunities your team get to think together and how you can create a common approach like the one that I've just been talking about. So it's also the slides and the approach, the curriculum and the lesson resources are also PD for current national mathematical thinking. So you may be familiar with the mathematics guidance, Key Stage 3 by the NCETM and DFE. It's a pretty huge document. I think it's several hundred pages long, between 200 and 300 pages long. I wouldn't expect anyone in the room knows everything that's in it. It was developed by the DFE and the NCETM, offering general guidance. Also offers a curriculum framework as well, with suggestion for the order of teaching topics. It's not dissimilar to the order that we offer in our curriculum framework. And then it's got detailed guidance on planning and teaching, covering prior learning and assessment. It doesn't have lessons, it's just got guidance. I just wondered, out of interest, if anyone is referring to this guidance as part of their planning. Do type a yes in the chat if you are. So just to zoom in on the use of tokens, it is a manipulative or representation that they promote in the guidance. I'll let you read the box. That's a direct extract from the booklet. So there's that connection between symbols, the manipulatives, we've got the representation of the number line and the language that I've just talked about, it's really complex in bringing all of those together in a way that is consistent for everyone to use. But you can see that that's been really achieved in that slide that I shared. So what do the people that we work with think about departmental workshops? Well, we've had some recent feedback from them, and one mastery lead, who is the person that leads the programme in their department, shared that they felt they're a great place for discussion. And as a team, they use them for thinking about how they're going to sequence a unit. So yes, of course, the unit is sequenced, but you have to make sense of that for yourself as well. They look at different methods and agree a method for consistency. Be a beautiful thing to hear if I was an SLT overseeing a maths department. Another ML said we discussed different approaches to teaching the topic, and we agree the best approach, which as a department we use in teaching, it's that collaborative nature of the conversation that everyone's involved, everyone's agreeing, and then ideally everyone's implementing as well. This was in direct response to the departmental workshop that we did, but through that collaborative discussion around using double-sided counters, they felt this was an alternative approach to teaching, which would be definitely implemented as a department, still talking in the language of a team. And lastly, I'll be leading my team on using counters in the upcoming modules. Today's DW is a great opportunity to rehearse this. Not only do our students need to rehearse what they're learning, we as teachers need to rehearse it. Mastery leads who are leading teachers need to rehearse it. We all need to practice what we do before we actually get on the stage and perform it. So I love that quote as well. So I'm just going to finish my section. I've talked a lot about online PD for mastery leads, but we also offer recorded training for mastery leads to run with their teams. It's for teachers. So again, it's a 3-year programme, but this is the first year highlighted in pink. So making the most of maths mastery resources. Is everyone really aware of all of that PD that I've talked about, the videos, the notes and guidance, how they're going to use that for their planning, the departmental workshops, everything that we have on our platform to support teachers in planning their lessons. Then we zone in on dimension of depth. In the spring term, we look very specifically about teaching for language and communication, and then thinking about refining your classroom practice. That's just really good questioning and formative assessment in the classroom. So that's the first year. We have 2 more years in that training programme. And then we have one more tier of online training, which we love doing. It's what's coming up. It really is subject knowledge developments. We look at very specifically at key elements of spring learning and sort of unpick that together with teams. And whole teams join that training, and then we give them lots of opportunities during the training to stop talking and they have a discussion as a team about the maths that's coming up in spring term. So lots of online training as well. I know that slide's very detailed, but I'm now going to hand you over to Phil, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the detail of our curriculum.
Thanks, Claire. So Claire has spoken about professional development and how you can use that to empower teachers in your classrooms. At our Curriculum Plus, we really believe that professional development is at its most impactful when it is linked in to the wider curriculum, when everything you do is linked into that professional development and vice versa. So we can provide all the tools that a school needs to be able to link that professional development to their curriculum, to their assessment, and have the whole package working together to empower teachers and get amazing outcomes for their pupils. We can think of this in a few different sections. So let's start with our long term, as we do when we plan. With our long term, we have curriculum overviews, as you'll see on your screen at the moment, which is directly linked in to the professional development and the training that we provide, which is directly linked in to the assessments, both formative and summative, that we provide within our curriculum. Zooming in a little bit, we can then go to our unit level planning. We provide unit level guidance, co-planning models that again link into all of the professional development within our curriculum. Alongside that, there's pre-unit, post-unit assessments that can guide your teaching, that can give you examples of what to do if there are gaps in your pupils' knowledge and ways that you can start to address and close those gaps moving forward. We also have our lesson level professional development and teacher guidance. We zoom all the way into that individual lesson, and we give that guidance about what teachers may want to do, what questioning they want to use, what they can do to adapt certain activities to meet the needs of all of their pupils. Alongside that, we can provide our in-lesson assessment to make sure that we are continuously assessing gaps. All of our lessons follow a cycle that is informed by evidence and has been trialled in classrooms across the country. We always start with a do now, which is a great chance for low stakes quizzing, making sure we're hitting that forgetting curve and we are checking prior knowledge before we even start the lesson. We then move on to our talk tasks, a great chance for pupils to chew through any knowledge that they're still working on, that they are getting to grips. We move into our new learning, where we deliver our teacher exposition, where we teach the pupils the new content. After that, we move into our quick checks, because we don't want to plough on through that lesson if we don't know that the pupils have understood what we said. So we make sure we check that so that we can close any gaps straight away. I know Claire was very keen to talk a bit more about these quick checks.
So they're really diagnostic, and they're a really great opportunity for teachers to learn about misconceptions as well. I think there's a little bit of PD going on in here that I didn't want to miss, because yeah, the diagnostic answers allow teachers to expose students thinking about why an answer is correct, or maybe why an answer is incorrect.
Great, thanks, Claire. And then after we've diagnosed any of those misconceptions, we can move on for the pupils to develop their learning. So they can then have a chance again to chew through what they've done before they move on to our independent activities, which are detailed in our student book. We then have our plenaries, so an opportunity to bring that class back together and reinforce those key concepts, ensuring students have understood the key ideas from the lessons. We then always end with an exit ticket, again, giving those pupils the opportunity to demonstrate they've met the learning objectives. So as you see, that formative assessment is throughout that whole lesson. We're using every opportunity we can to make sure that we understand where our pupils are and what we need to do next as teachers, how we need to develop ourselves to meet their needs. Alongside all of this, we also provide a huge amount of additional professional development. Our induction training, we can provide school visits, and we can provide support in implementing a curriculum if you did choose to use our curriculum. That professional development is all aligned to the EEF best practice. We can share sort of a link to that after this session if anyone is interested. And we really enjoy getting into your schools and working with you to both implement and develop this curriculum. We can provide up to 2 in-school visits and up to 4 virtual sessions, where we can do a mixture of learning walks, we can do some training, and we can do development sessions with leaders within your schools to help you really get this curriculum up and running and working brilliantly within your classrooms.
So I'm just going to recap on what those elements are, because that's quite a lot of information to take on board. So the heart of our programme, success is what is achieved in school by a team, and the central vehicle for that, we believe, is the departmental workshop. Our lesson resources, and we have a before you start slide, which I haven't shared, which helps teachers make those connections from unit to unit, representation to representation, and the notes and guidance slide, all embedded in the lesson resources to support teachers in developing their understanding of the programme. In our online PD and our recorded PD, both mastery leads and teams develop their understanding of the programme even further. And through our in-school support, that's what I do, going to schools, seeing how the programme is implemented and the impact it's having in lessons. So PD is embedded in every aspect of those elements that I've just shared with you. And I wonder if you feel I have met my bold claim of Maths Mastery being both a curriculum and PD programme that supports teachers in developing their subject knowledge and pedagogical expertise through each and every engagement with the programme.
Brilliant. And now we are just going to move on to a chance for any of you to ask any questions you may have. So please feel free to type them in the chat, unmute yourselves and ask us. If you'd like to hear anything more about the work we're doing here at Art Curriculum Plus, please do feel free to reach out to us. You can either drop us an email at partnerships@artcurriculumplus.org.uk, or if you scan the QR code or enter that shortened link below it into your web browser, that'll take you to a page where you can book a call directly with a member of the team to discuss what we're doing, any questions you may have about all of our work going on over here. So as I said, please feel free to pop anything in the chat, any questions that you may have.
Yeah, we've left quite a bit of time because we feel we shared quite a lot of information in the last 40 minutes or so. So please do ask us questions.
Okay, so we've just had a question come through about the cost of implementing the curriculum. In terms of that cost, it's best to use that link you can see on the screen, just book in a call with us and we can discuss that directly in that call. The reason is because it depends on a few things. It depends on the number of years that you'd like to look at implementing it for, the size of your school. So if you book in a call with a member of the team, we can put together a tailored quote for you that is fairly unique to your school to make sure we're getting you the best price that we can.
That's a really good question from Joe about adjusting for an SEN school, and I do work with several actually who are very successfully using the programme. The lessons, you mentioned the lessons could go too fast for pupils. The curriculum is intended to be adapted for your students. The lesson resources are intended to be adapted for your students, and actually slowing it down to, for example, if we're thinking about that addition and subtraction of positive and negative numbers, maybe spreading that out over a week. That will involve thinking about how you adapt your medium-term plans to accommodate that, but the curriculum is also planned for only 36 weeks in Year 7. Obviously, it's a 39-week year. It's 34 weeks in Year 8, 32 weeks in Year 7. So we do plan in big buffer zones for teachers to all the things that happen in schools that mean you miss some maths lessons, but also to add extra lessons in when you need them. So I hope that answers that question about pace. The pace and particularly the manipulatives are especially good for SEN schools. We use Maths Mastery in our school but cannot see any effect on low ability students. How is your curriculum adapted to that? I'm not sure what question you're asking. Raj, would you mind elaborating on that? If you're asking how we adapt the curriculum for lower prior retaining students, actually, we know that's a question that lots of people ask us. It's a lot of the work that I do with schools. We spend time considering how to adapt the slides, how to strip them back, how to ensure that students are accessing the same task, but in a more scaffolded way. And actually, we've got a lot of online training for that as well, because we know that that's something schools ask us about a lot.
Tracy, I see that you've asked how you can access the curriculum if your school's not subscribed to the programme. So to be able to access, you would have to set up that subscription to the programme. But again, if you book in a call with us or drop us an email at the email address on the screen, we can sort of have that discussion with you about how we can get you set up and how we can get you access to start accessing all our amazing training and resources.